Welcome to my channel, and this is Enjoy with Kitten Story, titled The Prince and the Magical Garden. In a distant kingdom, nestled between towering mountains and lush green valleys, there lived a young prince named Rami. Rami had a deep love for nature and spent most of his time wandering through the palace gardens and hunting in the woods. His favorite place was the old royal garden that he had inherited from his grandfather. This garden was unlike any other in the kingdom. It was filled with flowers and plants no one had ever seen before, with colors that changed magically each season, giving it a mythical beauty. One day, as Rami was exploring the garden, he noticed a strange flower he had never seen before. It was a large flower with shimmering petals in two colors, violet and gold, and it glittered in the sunlight in a mesmerizing way. He approached it and decided to pick it. As soon as he touched the flower, he felt a cold shiver run through his body, and suddenly he found himself in a completely different place. Rami was now standing in another garden, but this one was much larger, and everything in it was bigger than what he was used to. The trees were massive, and the flowers rose higher than his head. The prince quickly realized he had entered a magical world. As he explored this new world, he heard a soft voice calling him. He followed the voice until he reached a small lake with crystal-clear water. There he saw a beautiful girl dressed in a gown made of flower petals. Her eyes sparkled with a bright green color, and she smiled at him kindly. She said, "Welcome, Prince Rami. I've been waiting for you for a long time." Rami was surprised and asked, "Who are you, and how do you know my name?" The girl replied, "I am Layla, the guardian of the magical garden. This garden has belonged to your ancestors for centuries, and now you are its new heir." Layla continued to tell Rami the story of the magical garden, which had been hidden from the world for centuries. The garden was protected by Layla and her army of fairies, and it held ancient secrets and extraordinary powers. She explained that the flower he had picked was the key to the garden, and that he could now use its power to protect his kingdom from enemies. Rami spent the next few days learning the secrets of the magical garden and befriending all the mystical creatures that lived there. He learned how to use the powers of the plants and flowers to face his enemies, and how to summon Layla and the fairies to help him in times of need. When Rami returned to his kingdom, he found it under threat from a powerful army led by an evil king who planned to take over the throne. But thanks to the power he had gained from the magical garden, he was able to repel the army and protect his kingdom. After defeating the evil king, Rami returned to the magical garden and thanked Layla and all the creatures who had helped him. From that day on, Prince Rami became a wise and strong ruler, and he continued to visit the magical garden, which became a part of his daily life. And so, Rami lived happily, loved by all the inhabitants of his kingdom, and the magical garden remained a closely guarded secret between him and Layla until the time came for a new heir to appear. Title: The Adventure of Tim and the Talking Cat. Tim was an ordinary boy who lived in a small town. He loved reading books about adventures, but he never thought he would have one of his own. His days were usually spent going to school, playing with his friends, and helping his mother around the house. But one day, something extraordinary happened. It was a Saturday morning, and Tim decided to go for a walk in the nearby woods. The woods were peaceful, filled with the sounds of birds singing and leaves rustling in the wind. Tim often went there when he wanted to think or just enjoy some time alone. But on this particular day, the woods were different. As Tim walked along a narrow path, he heard a strange noise coming from the bushes. It sounded like someone was talking, but the voice was too soft to understand. Curious, Tim walked closer and carefully pushed the branches aside. To his surprise, he saw a small, fluffy cat with bright green eyes staring back at him. The cat looked ordinary, but then it did something extraordinary. It spoke. "Hello, Tim," the cat said in a cheerful voice. Tim couldn't believe his ears. You can talk?" he stammered, his eyes wide with amazement. "Of course I can," the cat replied, sitting down and wrapping its tail around its paws. "My name is Whiskers, and I need your help." Tim was still trying to process the fact that a cat was talking to him, but he was also intrigued. "What kind of help do you need?" he asked. Whiskers looked around, as if to make sure no one else was listening. "I come from a magical kingdom, hidden deep in these woods. My kingdom is in trouble, and only someone brave and kind-hearted like you can save it." Tim was both excited and nervous. He had always dreamed of having an adventure, but he never thought it would actually happen. "What do I need to do?" he asked eagerly. Whiskers smiled. "Follow me, and I'll show you the way." The cat led Tim through the woods, taking paths that Tim had never seen before. They walked for what felt like hours, and just when Tim thought they might be lost, they arrived at a large tree with a door carved into its trunk. "This is the entrance to the magical kingdom," Whiskers explained. "Once we go through, there's no turning back." Tim took a deep breath. He was a little scared, but he was also determined. "I'm ready," he said. Whiskers nodded and pushed the door open with his paw. Inside, there was a swirling vortex of colors. Tim hesitated for a moment, then stepped through the door with Whiskers by his side. On the other side, Tim found himself in a place unlike anything he had ever seen. The sky was a deep shade of purple, and the trees were made of shimmering crystal. The air was filled with the sweet scent of flowers, and he could hear the distant sound of music. "This is amazing," Tim exclaimed, looking around in wonder, but Whiskers didn't seem as cheerful as before. "We don't have much time," he said seriously. "The kingdom is in danger. An evil wizard has stolen the heart of the forest, the magical gem that keeps our world alive. Without it, everything will wither and die." Tim felt a surge of determination. "We have to get it back." Whiskers nodded. "The wizard lives in a dark castle at the edge of the kingdom. It's a dangerous journey, but I believe you can do it." Tim and Whiskers set off on their journey. They crossed rivers and climbed mountains, facing challenges at every turn. At one point, they had to solve a riddle to cross a bridge guarded by a troll. At another, they had to outsmart a flock of mischievous birds that tried to lead them astray. Finally, after a long and difficult journey, they reached the dark castle. The castle was surrounded by a moat filled with bubbling green liquid, and the walls were so tall they seemed to touch the sky. But Tim didn't let fear stop him. With Whiskers by his side, he sneaked into the castle through a secret entrance. Inside, the castle was dark and cold. They could hear the wizard's laughter echoing through the halls. "We have to find the heart of the forest before he realizes we're here," Whiskers whispered. They crept through the castle, searching every room. Finally, they found the heart of the forest glowing in a glass case in the wizard's chamber. Just as they were about to grab it, the wizard appeared. "So you think you can steal from me?" the wizard sneered. He was tall and menacing, with dark robes and eyes that glowed like embers. Tim didn't back down. "The heart of the forest doesn't belong to you. I'm taking it back." The wizard raised his hand and a bolt of lightning shot towards Tim, but just in time, Whiskers jumped in front of Tim and created a shield with his magic. The lightning bounced off the shield and struck the wizard, knocking him to the ground. "Quick, grab the heart," Whiskers shouted. Tim ran to the glass case, smashed it with a nearby stone, and grabbed the heart of the forest. As soon as he touched it, the castle began to shake. "We need to get out of here," Whiskers said. They raced out of the castle just as it started to crumble behind them. Once they were safely outside, Tim handed the heart of the forest to Whiskers, who placed it in a small hole in the ground. As soon as he did, the entire kingdom seemed to come alive. The sky turned blue, the trees sparkled, and the air was filled with the sound of birds singing. "You did it, Tim," Whiskers said, his green eyes shining with gratitude. "You saved our kingdom." Tim smiled, feeling proud of himself. "I couldn't have done it without you, Whiskers." Whiskers nodded. "You've proven yourself to be a true hero. Now it's time to go home. Tim felt a little sad to leave the magical kingdom, but he knew he had to go back. Whiskers led him back to the door in the tree, and with one last look at the magical world, Tim stepped through. He found himself back in the woods, as if no time had passed at all. But he knew that he would never forget the adventure he had with Whiskers. As Tim walked home, he couldn't help but wonder if he would ever see the magical kingdom again. And as he thought about it, he heard a familiar voice in his ear. Maybe someday, Tim, maybe someday. Maybe